Hello, everyone. This is Stacy. Welcome to The Landing. Hello. Today we have a very special guest, someone who played a big role in my own education. She's a beloved teacher, a Down East native, and a storyteller in her own right, my 8th grade math teacher, Mrs. Hannah Wrae Beasley. She's joining us to talk about what it was like growing up down east, how things have changed over the years, and her time as an educator. So whether you were once in her classroom like me, or just love a good story about how things used to be, this is an episode you won't want to miss. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to The Landing. Today we have a very special guest. This lady has been a part of my whole life. I have known her and loved her my whole life. And when you hear her voice, you are going to recognize it, I bet, especially if you attended Harkers Island Elementary School. So tell us who you are, who's your crowd, and where you're from.
My name is Hannah Nelson Beasley. I'm married to Joseph Thomas Beasley. I have 2 children, Joey and David. My father was Horace Nelson, whose father was James Nelson. And my grandmother was Hannah Guthrie, and she was Alfonso Guthrie's and Alice Hancock's daughter. I had 4 brothers and 2 sisters. My oldest sister was Sylvia. She's still living. And then there's me. And my next brother was William Earl, and he's deceased. He was 15 months younger than I was.
Wow.
And then I have a sister named Marina, who is about 3.5 years younger than I am. And then I had a brother named David Paul, who died. And I had a brother named George Linwood, who's still living. He lives in Moorhead. And I had a brother named Frederick that died.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you want to know?
Now, what do we want to do? Well, I want you to think back to when you were little, growing up on the island, growing up down east, what that was like, because it was nothing like it is now.
No.
So just share a little bit about what you can remember and share some stories with us.
I can remember going to Harkers Island Elementary School before they took the high school off the island.
Mm-hmm.
My first grade teacher was Miss Davis. She was from Beaufort. And then my second grade teacher was Miss Marshburn, and she was from Marshallburg. I had a third grade teacher named Miss Pond.
Pond, P-O-N-D?
Pond, P-O-N-D, and she was from Davis.
Mm-hmm.
I later went to school with her nephew, Edward Pond.
Oh, wow.
And then my 4th grade and 5th grade and 6th grade teachers was Miss Thelma Harris Moore and Miss Sudie Guthrie.
Mm-hmm.
And my 7th grade teacher she's from Atlantic. And I remember when she used to come to school, her husband had cut the back off of her car and made it into a truck.
Oh, really?
And then I had Miss Wade for 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in 8th grade, they took the high school, away from the island,
Okay.
and they went to Smyrna.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember one thing that sticks out was that after Christmas, when I was in 8th grade, your Aunt Barbara Davis,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Barbara Allen,
Barbara Allen.
she got a ring for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And she came in and was bragging about it was a diamond.
Uh-huh.
And Tom Garrison Lewis,
Mm-hmm.
he looked at her and he says, well, hand it here and I'll see if it'll cut glass. And he went up to the window with it and scraped the glass down with the ring. That I can remember going to the sand hole for a party in 8th grade. And that was the first time I ever saw Miss Wade with pants on.
Oh.
She always wore dresses. Well, women did back then.
Yeah.
Women didn't wear pants.
Yeah.
And I can remember after the party after we had the weenie roast and it was over, that we walked to the Easter from the sand hole
Mm-hmm.
all the way down to where George Rose's house is.
Wow.
Because that was where Sylvia Rose and William Rogers and Joe and Gaskell lived.
Mm-hmm.
And we walked down the road to singing, and there wasn't any cars, didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any transportation. So rather than have them walk all the way home by themselves, me and Peggy Ann and Connie and 4 or 5 more of us, we walked them to the Easter, and then we walked back home.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Now, where was home for you? Like, where did you grow up on the island? What
I
part?
grew up down Honeysuckle Lane.
Okay, so that's where your mom lived.
That's where my mom lived.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And in that neighborhood was all of my family, or
really?
Daddy's family, Grandma's family, because she was kin to Alan Guthrie, that was her brother, and he lives where Rosita lives now.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and across the road from him, where Donnie Yeomans used to have his store, was Aunt Carrie, Carrie Yeomans, who married Kendall Yeomans.
Okay.
And then right beside her was Uncle Louie, who owned the barber shop. And right beside him was Buddy Bill, William, and Aunt Gertie. And I remember that Aunt Gertie died on my birthday.
No.
Because it was May 16th. And I can remember that we had planned to go swimming that day because you had to get a little bit warm in May before Mama would let you go swimming.
Right.
And she had promised us that she would let us go swimming on my birthday. And that day she wouldn't let us go.
Because she had passed.
We sat in the porch in the swing and just to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
But I can remember that they buried Aunt Gertie in the yard where she lived.
Really?
Uh-huh. And she had a mimosa tree that went over her grave. And that grave stayed there for years until they finally reburied her out to the Virgin May Cemetery.
Wow. Well, was that an unusual thing then?
Well, he was.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
Uncle Buddy Bill wanted her buried, and
Yeah.
she wanted to be buried under that tree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow.
But right beside Buddy Bill was Grandma's house. And I'll tell you all about her in just a minute. Across the road from her was Aunt Mattie, who married Herbert Davis, and she had 3 boys, Grover and Don and Samuel. And then he died, and he remarried Thelma, who was Marie. I believe they were Guthrie's.
Okay.
And Margot's grandmother.
Okay. Yeah.
That Marie.
Yeah.
But that was her sister. And then right beside her, on the same side of the road going further east, was Aunt Mary. So all of Mama's...
Everybody
Everybody was in that neighborhood.
Wow.
And then when Grandma had her youngest, of course, she had one that died, Baby Walter, and he's buried up here at Harker's Point Cemetery. And she had 6 children, including Buddy Walter. But she had Aunt Nanny, who was Almeida's mother, and then she had Big Sissy, her name was Letha. She married Charlie Nelson. Nelson married Nelson. And then she had Aunt Lottie and Uncle Walter, who lived up behind Luther Rums's store. He married Madeline Willis, I believe they were. And Aunt Betty. Now, Aunt Betty was afflicted. She had, I think, polio, but they didn't know what it was, so it left her crippled, and Grandma had tended to her until Grandma died.
Wow.
We all lived right there in the neighborhood.
So really, Morena, she didn't move too far from everybody.
Moved to the woods behind Aunt Mary.
Just right through the woods.
Right.
Yeah. And your brother, too.
Yeah, and George did,
George
too.
Linwood, yeah.
Now he lives in Moorhead.
Yeah.
And David Paul didn't live far either. He moved down.
He was right there.
Cape Lookout. And sister went to all over. She lived in Kinston and Wadesboro and Littleton and Orlington. But she finally moved home.
Yeah.
And now she lives in Mama's house.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, I didn't realize that.
But we used to play on these net spreads. We had a shore then.
Yep.
And Granddaddy had his nets spread on the I call the net spreads, which was nothing but wooden structures that you could spread the nets on and let them dry.
Right, because it was cotton.
Yeah. Cotton nets. And I can remember playing on the net spreads, playing to the landing. I mean, we would turn over a boat and pack around it with the skiffs, and we would pack around it sand, and then we would dig us out a little hole and climb under it and play under that turned over skiff.
Yeah.
But we used to love to play in the afternoon after supper. But there was always 15 or 20 kids around because and they would congregate to Mama's, and we would race around I call it the block. You went out up the path and out the road and down by Uncle Louis to the shore, and then across the shore back up our path. And we would start in different directions. And when we would pass each other on that path, we would holler so everybody would know where we were.
I love it.
And see who got back first. And we used to ride bicycles. up and down the road. But Mama never did let us go to the highway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we stayed down, I call it the road, which
Mm-hmm.
was where we lived.
Right.
And I can remember growing up and going to Smyrna School.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have transportation.
How did you get there?
We went on a bus.
Mm-hmm.
But since I was cheerleader for 4 years, we stayed to practice. And then we walked from Smyrna to the crossroads.
Oh.
And if we were lucky, we picked up somebody.
You'd hitchhike?
Yep. Somebody would pick us up coming from Cherry Point.
Oh, that's why you went to the crossroads.
Went to the crossroads to pick up.
To see the traffic.
There was no other way to get home.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine that happening today?
No, you couldn't eat kids today.
No. For one thing, walking that far, that kid we're not going to do that.
No.
Wow.
But I can remember going to Smyrna to the basketball games. And we would have to bum a ride there and bum a ride back.
Wow. That's just, mind-blowing, because that wouldn't happen today.
Yeah.
In school, because we know that you were a teacher, and we'll get to that. But in school, as you were a student, what was your favorite subject?
Math.
I would have guessed it. I would have guessed it.
I loved math.
Mm-hmm. So when you graduated, tell us about your college, like where you went and all that.
I went to East Carolina, and I had to borrow money for the first year that I went. I borrowed it from a place in, I believe it's Pickens, South Carolina. And because Mom and Daddy didn't have any money.
Right.
Mom and Daddy was a fisherman, and he lived from mouth to mouth.
Yeah, right.
After I went to college, I worked on the college campus.
Mm-hmm. Doing what?
I worked in the home economics department, had a nursery school.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And they had about 20 students, preschool, nursery.
Mm-hmm.
And the person in charge of it, Mrs. Lamb, Lamb,
Mm-hmm.
she would make up the menus, and we would have fixed lunch for those kids.
Oh my goodness.
And I would go there at 11 o'clock and leave at 1.
Wow.
And in that length of time, we would have the lunch fixed, have it cleaned up, have the kitchen straight. And that's the reason most of the time my classes were early morning or late in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm. So you could work.
My roommates was out by 12 o'clock, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
But I worked in the library,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked in the nursery, and I finished school in 3 years.
Wow. Did you ever come home, or were you there pretty much?
No, I came home. J.M. Brown went to school with me, and he also went to East Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a car. He was an only child, so he had a car. And when he would come home on weekends, I would come with him, and he would take me back.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Wow. So when you graduated from East Carolina, where was your first teaching job?
I believe my first teaching job was New Jersey.
New Jersey?
Yeah, because I married Jill the November before I graduated in May.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we went to Virginia, the Eastern Shore.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't New Jersey. And we stayed on the Eastern Shore until we moved back home. And when we moved back home, I got a job at Smyrna.
Wow.
I was teaching him economics.
Really? Well, you had some training.
Well, I started in the 7th grade, and then the home economics teacher had problems. So she had to leave. And so they got me to teach home economics.
Wow.
And I taught until David, I was pregnant with David, and 63. And then I dropped out a year and stayed with David. Then I went back to Moorhead to teach 7th grade.
7th grade math.
7th grade math.
Yeah.
That was after Moorhead had taken the high school out to the new building.
Okay. To West Carteret?
West Carteret. Then we went to New Jersey, and I taught 7th grade there for 4 years.
Wow.
And then after that, we went to Hawaii, and I substituted. I didn't teach, but I substituted.
Right.
The high school and the elementary school and everywhere. And when we moved home, that's when I went back to work and went down here.
To the island.
And I taught there until I retired in 93.
Wow. See, I had no idea. I just knew you as Miss Beasley at Harker's Island. Yep, because you taught me math.
I can remember when we were in New Jersey, we had, there was no segregation. And I had 2 little black girls in my 7th grade class the year I got ready to leave. And one of them wanted to go with me.
Oh.
And I says, well, I can't take you. She said, but my mom won't let me go. I said, no, she won't.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I can remember I taught the principal's daughter. Boobalus. I can remember going into his office one time for an interview, and he told me that all that Susan talked about was me.
Oh.
He says, what do you do? I said, I just teach.
Yep.
I just teach.
Yep. Now, why were you traveling? What did
Joe was in
do?
the Coast Guard.
Okay.
And when he was in the Coast Guard when I married him,
Okay.
I met him at Cape Lookout.
Really?
One July, Daddy took us in his boat, and family went to the Cape, and he docked at the Army dock. And Rainey and I walked up to the Coast Guard station. And when we got there, Joe was in a truck with Carita and Rosita getting ready to go to the lighthouse, check on the light. And we went with him. And he thought, he thought I was about 12, 13 years old. Because I always wore my hair in a ponytail. Always pulled it, and it was long and I pulled it back. And when he found out that I wasn't, that I was a senior in college, he decided that he would take me. But he came down to Fanny. She was Fanny Young, and she was Daddy's cousin. Down where the bank is now, the old bank.
Yeah.
On that corner was where Fanny lived.
Okay.
And we were all down there cooking candy.
What kind of candy?
Fudge.
Oh. My mouth just watered thinking about your fudge. Okay.
But he came down there in a car that he had borrowed from Lingerfeld. That was a boy that was stationed with him. And wanted to know if I wanted to go to ride. Well, when I got in, the car filled up with all the girls that was down there. And Joe said there was about 9 or 10 of them. He said they were sitting in laps in the back seat.
That's not what he had planned.
No. But Joe came from a big family.
Mm-hmm.
And his last brother just died the 24th of January.
Really?
He was 80.
Wow.
But he was number 18.
18?
The brother was number 18 out of 19 children. Joe was number 12.
Oh, my word.
And he's the last one left.
Wow. That's amazing.
They were farmers.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow. Where was he from?
they lived in Duplin County, Pender County,
Okay.
and Sampson County, wherever they could tenant farm.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
But Joe's from Burgle.
Okay. I didn't realize that.
But, I had 2 children. Joey, who married Kim Grady, and they had 2 children, Neil and Aaron. And David married Talessa, Tellino, who was a Samoan. And they had 3 children.
Oh, okay.
The oldest boy, Sepha. His name was Josepha, but they called him Sepha. He is in Alaska now, working at a cannery.
Wow.
And Alema, the second oldest, is in Moorhead working at the Boys and Girls Club. And Talessa was the mother. Talia is in St. George, and she works with girls that have problems.
Okay. Now, Kim and Joey, are there 2 around here? Still?
Yeah, Kim and Joey still live out here in Oak-Hammock.
How about their kids? Are they still?
They both live in Beaufort.
So you do get to see them. Well, that's good. Yeah. So you have 5 grandkids?
5 grandkids and 2 great-grandkids.
2 great. Oh, my goodness.
Talia's got a little girl.
Oh, finally a little girl.
Not a little girl. She's 16.
Oh, wow.
And Sepha has a son who is named Eden. And he's about 12 or 13.
Oh, my goodness. Well, our time's almost up. Is there anything that you really want to share, that you want to say before we close?
I can't think of anything.
Except
we've got a pool. And it is used by our nieces and nephews.
Well, that's got to be fun.
And great nieces. Danielle comes from Moorhead.
To you.
Brings her 4 boys.
Yep. That was a good investment for y'all.
Yeah, it was.
Yep. I know even Billy Lynn, when they come, that's one of the highlights of their trips.
Billy Lynn, when she and her family comes, go.
Yep. Yep, they enjoy it. Well, I want you to know that, of course, I love you, but I remember being in your class, and like you said, you just taught. I mean, there wasn't any problems. There was no riffraff. We paid attention, and we worked, and we learned.
I remember one thing that happened one day in your class. Remember David Brooks?
Yes. Well,
he was in my class that year, and who was Elihu Youmans' mother. Anyway, she came to check on Elijah to the school on a moped. And we didn't see, of course, my class was right on the front.
On the front, yeah.
And anybody came to the office, you could see them when they left. But when she left and she started up the road on that moped, her back end was hanging over the saddle like that. Because you know how big she was.
Yes, bless her heart.
And before I could stop him, David opened the window and hollered something at her about her being so big. And I looked at him, I said, "Get that window closed."
Right now. I bet he closed it too. One thing I remember, because we didn't have air conditioning, and so we had the windows open, and a bee one day came flying in your room, and it was flying all around, and everybody, of course, went crazy. And you calmed everybody down, and you got a book, and you went, and you were very patient. And I'd be dag if that bee didn't land on my head, land right on top of my head. And before I had time to even think of what could happen, no, you didn't whack me hard, but you whacked that bee right on top of my head. Got it. And I just remember thinking, there's a dead bee. I never worried about you hitting me. All I would think is, there's a dead bee in my hair. But how funny it was, and everybody burst out laughing.
Do you remember how competitive you and Richie were?
Yes.
I mean, you would come, if you missed a problem, you would come to the desk and I would explain to you why you missed it.
Yep.
And if Richie missed a problem, he would come to the desk.
Yep, because we didn't want to make that mistake again.
Well, no, I think you didn't want one to outdo the other.
We definitely motivated each other to do well. Yep. You know, we were a month apart, and so we were basically, his birthday's in the end of February, mine's the end of March, and we were brother and sister. I mean, you know, we were so close. Connected to the hip.
Very close.
And we studied and did homework and together, but it wasn't a bad competition. It was a making each other better kind of thing. You know, we didn't get mad at each other. It was just always we wanted to know.
You always want to know why you missed it.
Yeah.
You were the only two that, if you missed a problem, you would come to the desk and want me to explain why you missed it.
I bet when you were grading those papers, you knew, okay, they're going to come and ask me.
Yeah. The rest of them didn't care. I mean, they just wanted to pass.
Right. Well, thank you so much for letting us come and talk to you. And thank you also for everything that you have ever done. I mean, all the time and effort and that you put into your teaching, and you've loved many one of the Island Young'uns.
Well, the Island Young'uns have always been special.
Yeah.
I says when they went to East Carteret, they'd come here to get help with their math. I can remember sitting at my kitchen table after I come home from the elementary school and helping them in high school.
Yeah. But what a wonderful thing that they knew they could, you know, that you would welcome them. Yeah.
I always told them I was always there.
Yeah. And
I still am.
You still am. You've always been. Well, thank you very much. I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you for joining us again to The Landing. This podcast is brought to you by the Coarse Sound Waterfowl Museum and Heritage Center. I am your host, Stacy Davis Basden, and today's podcast was produced by April Davidson. Tune in again next week as we continue remembering, sharing, and learning together. Until then, stay safe and be kind.